Everybody thinks digital nomads are freelancers like me who can work from anywhere. But the truth is, there's a whole secret world of 9-to-5 employees working from abroad without their employers knowing. Now, I'm not saying I was one of them for about a year, but I did get phenomenally well at the art of muting my Mexican in-laws during Zoom calls. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to work from anywhere without your employer catching on. But first, a disclaimer. This video is strictly for education and entertainment purposes only. I'm definitely not encouraging you to break any rules at work, but if you happen to be watching this from a hammock in Thailand, I won't tell anybody. Now that that's out of the way, let's answer the question of why your employer would care where you work from anyways. Most HR departments are probably concerned about any tax liability they would have to cover if you're working from abroad. If you spend too much time working in another country, you could run the risk of creating a permanent establishment for your work in that country. And then your employer would be responsible for paying taxes in that country. But a lot of countries have treaties with each other that allow you to go and work for a fixed period of time. Usually it's around 180 days. But sometimes the laws are so obscure and complicated that companies just ignore them anyways. Otherwise, you would have to pay taxes every time you travel to another country for business. Now, the next reason a company might care if you're working from another country is because of data security. If you work at a company that deals with a lot of confidential information, you could be putting the company data at risk if you cross borders, especially if you're connecting to a sketchy router in a random cafe or restaurant, and even at an Airbnb, someone could hack your equipment. Also, depending on the laws of the country that you're working from, the local government could have the right to seize your work equipment and search it. So that would just be a huge problem for your company, especially if they have confidential client data. They could breach their contract if they get searched, so they would rather avoid that altogether and not let you work from abroad. Another reason a company might care is because of foreign labor laws. Some other countries have strict insurance, paid time off, and vacation rights, whereas other countries don't have those same rights. So if their employees go to those other countries to work from, they could be held accountable to follow those same rules. Now, if you're on a tourist visa, you're generally not allowed to work, even if it's remotely for a foreign company. Some countries are cool with it as long as you're not taking away income from any locals, others not so much. So that's why digital nomad visas exist now that let you work from another country without breaking local employment or immigration rules. And then there's other reasons, like it could throw off communication if you're in a different time zone, or it could just look bad for the company if you're in Bali while everyone else is freezing in Chicago smelling Janet's coffee breath. So the bottom line is that there's a lot of gray areas when it comes to working from another country, and most companies would rather avoid any headaches by just having a blanket rule of no working from abroad. But the good news is, if you plan on doing it anyways, there's ways to stay under the radar. Now, the first step to becoming a secret nomad is to get a fully remote job. Now, this may seem painfully obvious, but getting a remote job has become a lot more challenging recently because corporate America is making this push back towards the office.
Return to the office.
Return to office, back to the office.
Amazon, Twitter, AT&T, JP Morgan, Dell, and a whole load of other companies have recently ended their COVID-era remote work policies and are demanding employees come back to work. That's despite the fact that it's been proven that working in the office is neither beneficial to you or your employer, but you gotta get in there to build the AI that will replace you. So rather than fighting the uphill battle of convincing your employer to let you work remotely, you should find a company that is already hiring a remote role. I highly recommend looking on LinkedIn for jobs. This is where I found my last 3 corporate roles before I became a freelancer. And you want to filter your search for remote roles, obviously, but you also want to search for the most recent job postings, because sometimes companies keep up job postings that are months old that they've already filled. So you want to look within, at the farthest I would go is the last 30 days. Now, according to the most recent information I could find, the leading industries that are hiring remote roles in 2025 are technology, sales, and marketing. And then on the other end of the spectrum are things like manufacturing production, general business, and science and research. But surprisingly, there's not a high demand for remote workers in creative and design jobs. And that's surprising because those types of jobs can totally be done remotely. For example, I'm a freelance video editor living in Mexico, and my clients are based in the US and Canada. Now, that likely reflects an overall decline in demand for creative jobs. With AI tools and outsourcing reshaping the whole creative industry, competition is tougher than ever. And that's exactly why I'm creating a video editing course for freelancers, to help you sharpen the technical skills that you need to stand out, but to also give you the business insight I wish I had when I first started. So if you're interested in learning more, you can sign up for the waitlist in the description down below. Alright, so once you have a remote job, step 2 to becoming a secret nomad is to pick a country. Now, if you choose to remain within the country in which your business is located, like maybe you're doing van life in the US and you work for an American company, then you will need to establish a tax residence somewhere in the United States. So if you own your own home, you can use that address, or if you have a friend or relative who's willing to receive your mail, then you can use their address. But if none of the above apply, you can use what's called a virtual mailbox service. Now, this is a service that lets you pick a street address from a list of options, and they'll receive your mail, open it, scan it, and send it to you. Now, I can't personally vouch for any of these because I haven't used these services. I use my mom's address. But if you do go this route, you could choose a state with little to no state income taxes. I mean, you won't be living in the state anyways if you're traveling or if you're living abroad, so you wouldn't benefit from any state taxes you pay, so you might as well save as much money as you can. You're also going to want to make sure you're working within company hours, so while it's possible to do overnight shifts from Asia, I wouldn't say it's sustainable. I've done the overnight shift when I was working TV news, and I got my first gray hairs at 25 years old because of it, so I don't recommend it. If you're in North America, I would stick with the Western Hemisphere. Another important thing to consider is your visa. As I mentioned earlier, some countries have digital nomad visas, which allow you to stay and work in a foreign country for an allotted amount of time. Now, this is great if you have permission from your boss, or if you're a freelancer, or you own your own company. But it's not ideal if you're trying to stay under the radar, because these types of visas usually have an income requirement, meaning you have to show proof that you're employed and how much money you make, and you'll likely have to get your employer involved in the process. A lot of countries have tourist visas, which are much easier to get, and oftentimes don't even require any more paperwork other than having a passport. Some let you stay for up to 6 months and are pretty lenient with you working online. Just don't overstay your visa because this can get you in a lot of trouble. What a lot of people do, and I'm not saying it's entirely legal, but it's also technically not illegal, is what's called a border run. Now, this is when you leave a country and then come back to renew your visa. So let's say you're in Thailand and Thailand has a 3-month limit on tourist visas. So before your visa is up, you would leave and take a trip outside of Thailand and then come back, and then your visa would be renewed for 3 more months. Now, the next step is to go incognito, and this is where we get to the technical side of things. How do you effectively hide your location? So some techniques are just common sense, right? If you want to hide your location, don't advertise your location on social media. Don't check in from a cafe in Lisbon on Facebook. Don't post pics of your travels to Instagram. Don't talk about living in Mexico on YouTube. I probably could have listened to my own advice here. But then there are some more nuanced techniques, okay? So if you have Zoom meetings, make sure to always have the same background filter. Any inconsistency could just look sus. You're also going to want to use an international credit card because if you set up a bank account with direct deposit to a foreign bank, that would also look pretty sus. And another thing I recommend if you're American is to use Google Voice as your US phone number. This way you can make calls with a US number from anywhere in the world, and all you need is an internet connection. Now, the downside of this is that you do have to continue paying for a US phone number, but it's totally worth it because you don't want to lose your phone number in the US anyways, so you could just pay for the most basic plan to keep your phone number and then also use Google Voice to make calls from anywhere. Trust me, you don't want to lose your US phone number because then when you come back, you have to update your phone number on every single service, and then they ask you for 2-factor authentication, and you don't have that, and it's just a huge headache. Also, work from a quiet Airbnb, not a loud cafe or co-working space, and you're also going to want to make sure that you always have a strong internet connection. Speaking of Wi-Fi, you'll want to use a VPN to mask your location. So a VPN, or a virtual private network, lets you appear as though you're connecting from a place other than your physical location. I personally use NordVPN, and this video isn't sponsored by them or anything. I just got a really good deal at the time. I think it was like $70 for a 2-year plan, and I can definitely recommend them. But along with a VPN, you can even take your security a step further by getting a travel router. Now, a travel router is a compact device that basically takes an existing network and turns it into your own private network. This is great for those situations where you want to work from a cafe or a co-working space, but you don't necessarily trust the public Wi-Fi. Some of them even come with their own VPN built in, and they can boost the signal of the Wi-Fi they're connected to. So that's like going from everyone at the Starbucks sharing the same Wi-Fi signal to you having your own personal Wi-Fi. And if you're traveling around a lot, you don't have to reconnect all your devices to a new Wi-Fi. You just connect your travel router to the Wi-Fi, and then all your devices are already connected to the travel router. Another cool thing they can do is that they can be connected to multiple networks and load balance between them. So let's say you're in a place with pretty slow internet, but you do have phone service. You could turn on your phone's hotspot and also be connected to the internet, and then the travel router will will use both of their bandwidth to give you faster internet. Now, a layer deeper than VPNs, if you really need that extra protection, is what's called residential proxies. So the truth is that most IT departments can tell you're using a VPN if they want to. Now, that doesn't necessarily give you away because they can't tell where you're connecting to that VPN from, but they know you're using one. But whereas VPNs connect to large servers, residential proxies connect to real residential IP addresses, which are connected to real devices, which makes them look more legit. The problem with these is that they can be a little bit slower and they tend to be a little bit more expensive.
VPNs, travel routers, and residential proxies are all great ways to hide your location from your employer. But just doing the research for this video, I felt like the FBI was going to come knocking at my door. What if you didn't need to hide your location or boost your Wi-Fi? Because your device is safely at home, connected to your home Wi-Fi, while you're in Tokyo at a cat cafe. For those of you who are really technically inclined, there's a VPN service called Tailscale, and it lets you connect from your home internet from anywhere in the world. The setup process seems kind of complicated, but if it's something that you're interested in, it would be worth looking into. But there's also the option of remote access. Now, the basic idea is that instead of working directly from your laptop while abroad, which could reveal your location, you remote into your home computer, which stays in your home country. That way, you're technically working from home, even though you're not physically there. Your files and apps are all accessed locally by your home computer using that machine's processing power, RAM, and even Wi-Fi speed. And your employer sees your home IP address, your home time zone, and system-level info that looks like you're in your home country. Now, to pull this off, you're going to need a powerful home computer that stays on and is connected to your home internet. Ideally, it's hardwired for a stable connection. Now, the downside of this is that you're going to run up a high electricity bill back home. You're also going to need remote access software, and then you bring with you, when you go abroad, a light travel laptop or a tablet. Now, this is just your remote control. It doesn't need to be powerful. It's just showing you the screen of your home computer. And this simple hack tricks most monitoring software. But there are some things you're going to want to avoid if you go this route. If your company uses screen monitoring software, you need to install it on your home PC, not on your travel laptop. You should also never run work apps directly on your travel laptop because that'll blow your whole cover. And you need to turn off location sharing features in apps like Google, Zoom, or Slack. And you're also going to want to use cloud file storage that syncs with your home computer. Now, there is one more level even further, but I don't know if you dare go there. This is getting into an Inception-like territory, but you could run a virtual machine within your remotely accessed computer. All right, so let's break this down. A virtual machine is like a computer inside a computer. It acts just like a normal computer. It can have its own operating system, run apps, and save files, but it's not physical. It's all simulated with software. So you could essentially use a fake computer inside your home computer that you're remotely accessing. Now, this is the next level stuff because it isolates your work environment from your private life entirely. Even if your employer installs monitoring software, they'll only be able to see what you do on the virtual machine. So as long as you keep the virtual machine completely clean, then what you do outside of work is your business. That way you never mix anything and there's no potential for leaked cookies or metadata. So let's recap. To be a secret nomad, you need to use common sense and be low-key about where you're working from. You can use a VPN to hide your address and a travel router to ensure a safe connection. And if you need even more security, you could remotely access your work computer. Now, if you like this video about remote work, I think you'll like this video about how I became a digital nomad. Thank you for watching, and if you're still here, comment Digital Ninja down below so I know who the real ones are. Peace.